Hey, sports card fans, welcome back to another episode of Two Guys, One Hobby. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good,
Been a little
good.
while since we've done one of these.
Yeah, I think it's maybe around a month, but
Think
things
so.
happen. Now that it's warmer weather, finally,
Yeah,
I'm sure
no
we're busy
kidding.
doing things. I know I got to find time to cut the grass every once in a while and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
just,
it's been raining here nonstop. So it's
yep.
just
Well,
like
we're not
the
too far
last 2 days have
apart.
been
The
nice, but
rain,
it's like
yeah,
I think
the
I've
rain.
cut my grass more this year already than last year combined. But
Yeah, I think all the rain that you get, I eventually get. So
yes,
it just goes right
that
across
is
the
true.
state. Yep. So we have a great guest with us today.
We do.
Don, he was your invited guest. So how about you do the introductions and then we'll get him on?
Yeah. So I like to get guys on here that aren't on a ton of live streams, and not that people don't know about him, because people definitely know about this guy. He's got a great channel and great cards, and got to meet him in person in Cleveland last year at the National. So it was very cool getting to meet him. And I just love storytellers. Those are my favorite type of channels, and this guy definitely has good stories, great cards. I mean, I can say that about everyone I have on. That's kind of why I have them on, because I enjoy their channels. But let's bring him on, and that'd be Rob, Baseball Time Traveler.
Hi,
Hey,
Rob.
Gentlemen, how are you both?
We're doing
Good.
well, or I'm doing well.
I was kind of chuckling because you're talking about your weather conditions. I'm out here in California, and it is a little after 5 p.m., and it is 105 degrees where I'm sitting.
It's what? 105?
105, yeah.
Wow. Now,
So I'll take rain any day right now.
What part of California are you in?
Palm Desert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so tired of rain out here.
Yeah.
We could use some.
I think the weather forecaster said it's rained every Saturday
since March. I saw that.
Since March.
Yeah.
Every Saturday since March. That's yeah, you finally get to the weekend, you're like, oh, I can relax and do stuff. No, it's raining.
Yep.
Well, you guys are obviously hogging all the water because we're not getting anything.
Yeah, we are.
I would love to be able to mow a lawn.
Yeah.
Well, come on out.
Yeah.
Hey, before I forget, because I always do this, I always wait to the very, very end of these shows for those. And Rob, we'll give you an opportunity here to introduce yourself, your channel, what you collect, and all that stuff, and we'll get maybe further and deeper into your collecting and so on. But I will have a link to Rob's channel in the description of this video. Definitely go check his channel out, check out his videos. Again, great storytelling, great collection. So if you're not familiar with Rob and his channel, definitely go check it out. So Rob, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your collection.
Well, first off, thank you both for having me on. I almost feel like I'm a little out of my league because all of your prior guests are all-stars, and I'm sitting here. I'm relative newbie. I started my channel in December of 2023, but I've only posted 36 videos to this point. But I started my channel because I really wanted to kind of document for my family and for anybody who was interested in watching kind of the development of the history and my collection and that sort of thing. And I'll start from really the beginning. When I was 9 years old, 1964, I bought my first baseball card. And it was, I went to they used to call them 5 and dimes.
Mm-hmm.
We went in and it was April of 1964, somewhere in that time frame, because Little League was kind of in mid-season at that point. And I went in and all I was looking for was a Willie Mays card. And you're all familiar with the 64 set, pretty straightforward. And, this is the card I was looking for. And, I found it. And then, I really wasn't a collector. As kids, we think, well, we're collecting, but we really bought the cards to look at the players. We didn't have access to internet, TV coverage back then. You had 3 channels. You might get a baseball game every once in a while. I was in the Pasadena area, which is a suburb of LA. So we would occasionally see the Dodgers on TV, and I could see Willie Mays only when they were playing the Dodgers. So it was a real thrill to get all these major players that you've heard about or read about in the newspaper. But when you got them on a card, it made it that much more special, So you start getting this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did, we played with our cards. We would
Yep.
flip, we'd throw them closest to the wall.
Yep.
Corners would get banged up, and I was so anxious to get Willie Mays cards. I was trading away my Mickey Mantles. And then when I made my second year of Little League, I was drafted by the Yankees, and I was assigned just out of the blue number 7. So all of a sudden, this is 1965, 66 time frame, and all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, stop trading away your Mickey Mantles and keep your Willie Mayses and keep them both. So, but again, I really wasn't collecting. Kids at that stage, we're not sitting there going, okay, I got to get this particular card. I didn't even know, all these old time guys, other than you knew Babe Ruth, you knew Lou Gehrig, you knew Ty Cobb, but for the most part, you'd never really know who all those guys were. And certainly didn't have access to their cards. I didn't even know they had cards. So fast forward, and I basically did what most people do. They pause, right? And I'll jump forward to the summer or spring of 1981. And I'm in my second year of law school. And I had just finished playing a softball game with a bunch of guys from law school. And we sat around this park. And we had a little paper bag with 8 little pieces of paper, numbered 1 through 8. And we started our own little fantasy baseball league in the spring of 81.
Oh, wow.
And my first draft pick was a guy named Vida Blue. And I drafted guys like Al Oliver, Dale Murphy, and our setup was you could retain players year to year.
Okay.
And with that in mind, we didn't know how long this was going to go. And it ended up going to 25 years.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah. But what we did was we would start looking for the hot rookies, right? Because you want to get somebody who you thought, hey, this guy's got some potential, which kind of led to, gosh, again, we're not at that stage where you have easy access to know what these guys look like. And so I was drafting guys like, Eddie Murray had been in the league for a few years at that point. And then you get into 1982, 83, all of a sudden the Cal Ripkins and the Wade Boggses start showing up, and Tony Gwynn and Ryan Sandberg. So you start, all of a sudden went from, oh, these cards might actually hold some value at some point. Because I started researching. I go, yeah, this thing called rookie cards, these have some kind of value in the collecting community. So I started, and you're speculating at that point. I remember putting away, a couple of dozen Dave Righettis and Tim Wallachs and Storm Davis and David Green's, names that just guys, flamed out. Righetti obviously had a great career, Wallach did, but not to Hall of Fame caliber. But the guys like Boggs and Ripken and so forth definitely skyrocketed. And that actually then propelled me. And I only collected probably until the mid 80s. I actually stopped before the quote junk wax era started. But I put all those cards away. And and what I was doing was I was buying boxes at Smart and Finals. It's an old chain, it's kind of predecessor to Costco. Where you go and buy wholesale, buy the boxes. I probably spent, I don't know, $5 on a whole box of cards. And, I was just ripping packs and I put them all, I'd started putting them in binders. I figured this is the way you do it to preserve the cards. And I still have all that stuff in my garage now. So what I did, then I went on pause, got married in 1991, 3 daughters, the whole deal. And then I retired a couple of years ago. And I said to my wife, the girls are all through college and everything at this point. And I said, now what am I going to do? And I thought, well, maybe I should start card collecting again, but really go back to the cards that meant something to me as a kid. Mm-hmm. And no disrespect to Wade and Cal and Tony and all those, but those guys are kind of my contemporaries. Mm-hmm. But it was more thrilling for me to go back and get my Willie Mays and my Mickey Mantles and my Hank Aaron's and all those guys, and Sandy Koufax. Guys,
and that's what I was going to ask you. You said you went back and got them. I was going to ask you this earlier. Those 64s you showed, those were not pulled from packs when you were a kid, or were
correct?
They?
Yeah, okay. No, those were long gone. My mom took care of my collection, just like many guys. Yeah, so everything that I have now, I acquired in 2023 and going forward.
Okay.
So yeah, I literally, what you see behind me and the cards, that I've got in front of me to show you during the course of the video, those are all new acquires, if you will.
Gotcha.
In fact, the one card that I did buy back in 1981, I went to one card show. because they were few and far between back then, at least where I was. And I bought that 64 Willie Mays, but that same one that I bought in 1982 or so, I sold that 2 years ago to make some money. And I sent 100 cards to PSA to kind of jumpstart me. And I ended up pulling a Gem Mint 10 Ripken rookie and a Sandberg rookie. And I sold them both for about $1,300 to $1,500 each. And that kind of jump started me. So then I could go out and start buying some fun cards. And then fast forward to 2023, and I've been acquiring cards ever since. Decided why not start a channel. 95 to 98% of the cards I own, I bought ungraded. Because I enjoyed just analyzing. I knew I was taking chances, but I have probably a 750 batting average as far as getting as good as I was expecting, or maybe a little better. A few fails here and there.
Right.
You don't pick up creases sometimes on photographs, but I figured my percentages were pretty good. And at this stage, I just recently made the decision to kind of switch from collecting all the guys from my era when I was growing up to going back to the 1930s. And that's when my dad was that 9 and 10 and 12-year-old kid. And I wanted to re-experience what he was going through. And what prompted me to go there was my dad passed away about 6 years ago now. And he wrote a short autobiography for the family, which I really appreciate that he did.
Yeah.
And one of the pages I was reading through, and he made a special reference to the fact that his father, my grandfather, made a special deal to always take my dad to ball games at the Polo Grounds because they were in the Bronx. So he went to the Polo Grounds for baseball, Yankee Stadium for some baseball and for some football. And he referenced Mel Ott, Carl Hubble, Bill Terry. Then he talked about some of the old-time Yankee Giants that he remembered, guys that went to Fordham. My dad went to Fordham University, both undergrad and law school. So it kind of just prompted me to go, gosh, he was so appreciative of his father doing that. And my dad did the same thing. He didn't collect cards. He was a fan. And I was fortunate enough to play in a lot of different sports at pretty high levels in some of the sports. And he would always be there for me. He'd be cheering me. I could hear his voice, in the stands, "Atta baby Rob," that kind of stuff. And it's something now that I'm kind of reliving what he went through in the 1930s from a historical perspective. I'm a history major, and I've always been fascinated by history. The 1930s was quite an era as far as, the world, the United States was going through depression. Mm-hmm. You've got things going on in Europe that obviously turned into World War II. You've got the Japanese moving into China. You've got the movie industry is starting to really blossom. The late 30s with the, Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, all these classic movies. Then, of course, you've got the burgeoning of, the Yankee dynasty through the late 30s there. Babe Ruth moved on. Joe DiMaggio filled that gap, and Gehrig, kind of was the tweener, but unfortunately we lost him, in 1930. Well, he retired in 39 and then died in 41. So that's really a pretty quick overview of where I am. And that's where my focus is now, trying to recapture as best I can the 1930s. And I've got, just as some examples, I'll give you some visuals here. Here's a photograph of Babe Ruth. That's his last game as a Yankee. He's in the locker room, and that's his last game as a Yankee. And I thought that was kind of a pivotal moment in Yankee history, in fact, baseball history. And then I pick up a lot of these little tidbits here, the who's who, these kind of things. Yeah. And you got Jimmy Fox here for 1939. And then another thing, and this is where my channel is going to be going, because if anybody has seen my channel, I do a lot of kind of mini documentaries on some of the World Series and that sort of thing. I'm planning on doing a pretty good one. This is the 1936 between the Giants and the Yankees. And again, this one and the 37 are very special to me because that's the Giants versus Yankees. So my grandfather, even though he never told me, he may have gone to one of these games. And,
Oh, wow.
And that's something that I definitely want to explore. And then I've also got some for the 1939. And if you look over here, it's kind of in the dark, but I've got the one over here. There we go. That's Lou Gehrig on the cover. That's the 39 World Series for Yankee Stadium. And that's a very special program. That's actually, I think it was game 2. Monty Pearson beat not Carl Hubble, but Bucky Walters, who was not the Cy Young winner, but the most valuable player in the National League that year. So these documents are just really cool for me to have possession of. And I really, kind of spurs me on to dig deeper. And, the cards behind me, primarily, I think virtually both racks now are 39 play balls, with the exception of the lower rack here. I've got several at SGC right now for grading. And the reason why I'm grading, I know a lot of guys, there's a lot of talk in the hobby about grading, not grading, half year, whatever. My purpose is, because I'm a little advanced in years, I don't want to leave my wife and my kids with a bunch of cardboard to them. I want them to have some value that they can attach and hand it over to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yep.
And instead of a guessing game. So and to encapsulate them, protect them, and that sort of thing. One thing I never figured out though is, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but the magazines that are encapsulated. Have you ever seen that?
I have.
A lot of guys are doing that with Sports Illustrateds and other and I always wonder why they encapsulate a magazine.
Yeah, I mean, you can't read them. At least the card, you can see both sides.
Yeah, they do it a lot for comic books.
Here, if this was encapsulated, like I can't look at it.
Right, right.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the comic book collectors do that.
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah.
Now, I had, speaking of history and fathers, grandfathers, my grandfather on my dad's side was a bit of not really a collector. He collected coins, but he was a local town lawyer, more of a transactional attorney. He didn't do, criminal cases. It was deeds and wills and things like that. So he would go around to different estate sales, and he would also go to the local newsstand, and he would say, hey, if there's ever a first edition magazine or comic book that comes out, just the first edition, set it aside for me, and I'll come in every Sunday or whatever and get my paper, and I'll take it. He also had a collection of every single Life magazine from, I forget, the first issue was like 1936 or 39 all the way to like 1976 or something, up in the attic in boxes, because I cataloged them one summer up in the heat in the attic, and I put them all in order, and I think he had every single one. But through that process of wanting, first edition stuff like that, he had the Sports Illustrated, and he had a few comic books. Not all of them were first editions, but one of them that he had, it was the first edition, was a Wonder Woman #1.
Wow. And
through my grandmother, and I seemed to be the only one in the family that was interested in all that stuff, I was sort of gifted the Sports Illustrated and Wonder Woman.
Well, that's awesome.
And I didn't have a need for the Wonder Woman comic book and stuff. It was beat up. It had its issues condition-wise, but I decided that it wasn't something, even though it was my grandfather's, it was something that I could use the money for other purposes. And so I actually had that graded. So the reason why I got that comic graded was the purpose was to sell it, not to look through it or to say, hey, this is a cool comic.
Right.
I think I had it restored a little bit, which cost me some money, and it graded like a 2.5 or a 3.
Yeah.
But it's still
carried some value.
Quite a bit of money. So, it allowed me actually in a way to be able for my wife and I to build our new house. So it was well put to use, and I'm sure he would be happy that comic led to it wasn't just like I blew it to go buy a fancy car or go on some trip or something like that.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's how I could see like books, comic books, magazines, yearbooks.
Well, I love, Rob, that your father wrote that autobiography, because like my grandfather, when I was probably 9 or 10, the only thing I remember, I asked him if he saw Hannes Wagner play, which my grandfather was born in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
So all I remember is him saying, yes, I did see Hannes Wagner play.
Right.
And, I was too young to like think about asking him, and they didn't have money. So I doubt he really went to a lot of games.
Yeah.
And my dad, before he passed, literally in the hospital 2 days before he passed, or I'm sorry, no, it wasn't. It was the last time I saw him before he got hurt, went to the hospital. He told me about these 3 guys he grew up with that all made the major leagues. They're all brothers. They were 3 or 12. And I actually have the cards. When my dad passed, I went and bought the cards of those players. But that's the only history I have. I don't have anything about Forbes Field and Ralph Kiner or anything like that. So it's very cool that.
Yeah, well, you think about me. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was born in 1888. So, he's in his 20s in the heyday of, the Ty Cobbs and the Walter Johnsons and all that. And speaking of that, we were just talking about magazines. This is another kind of quiet way that I've collected Hall of Famers and still have more than just a cover of a magazine, but there's going to be content in it that is pretty cool. And, it's a lot of fun to do this because, you got guys that, some great shots. And I got just a couple more. And these are 2 here that are going to be special just because of the Giants. And that's my dad's and my grandfather's.
When did that magazine, what were the years that was being
this is September 1935. The Walter Johnson was a 33, so it's not a playing days for him. But here's Bill Terry, last 400 hitter in the National League, player manager. And just to transition, here's one of my favorite guys and a very good friend of Lou Gehrig. And I'm, as you
Bill Dickey?
Bill Dickey, exactly right. And these are just, some of the little historical things that I try and collect and, to get back on the theme, because I know we all like cards and things like that. But these are some things that I'm going to be featuring, in some of my videos going forward. There's Joe Gordon and Bill Dickey. These are the exhibits cards.
Actually, I love seeing the other stuff. I've seen the cards a million times from people. Yeah. It's cool seeing
exactly. Stuff. And then I also, I love collecting photographs. And I'm not rich enough to collect all these type 1s and things, but this is a Gaudy Premium from 1939, but I've got some photographs.
That's very cool.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, I just got that recently. I bought that ungraded and I'm just thrilled to get it encapsulated. SGC sends me a message. By the way, this is going to be a little bit more of a charge. I go, that's okay. Put it in a slab.
Yeah.
And then
just curious, those baseball magazines.
Yeah.
How expensive is there like a big demand, or do those go for like several $100s? I mean,
it depends on the magazine.
Okay. And who's on the cover, of course.
I've got a Lou Gehrig back here, and that's going to run you a couple $100 depending on condition. I got a Joe DiMaggio here from 1937, and that's going to run you, $50 to $100. But all the other ones I showed you, Ott and those guys, again, always like cards, depends on condition, but you can get them as low as $15 up to $50.
Wow.
And
me, that's I don't know. I think that's an untapped area of the hobby. Of course, everything's focused on cards, and that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And some people may not have room. Oh, I don't have room for all these magazines and all this stuff. But to me, that's just like cards. Those magazines and programs and stuff like that, that's part of the history of the game as well. And I'm sure there's some interesting articles and stories about the players in those magazines, and just the way they talk and write about the players back then, the flamboyant language and just all this stuff that you don't see that today. It's all like, based on the stats and this and war and but back then it was more of a story of the players and more romanticized, I guess you could call it maybe. But
and the way I characterize it is you're reading current events that have now become history.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to pull out an article, from say April of 36. This young Joe DiMaggio, a guy playing for the San Francisco Seals, he's going to be driving across the country with Tony Lazzari and Frankie Corsetti, and they're going to be at spring training, and let's see what this DiMaggio kid's all about. He just had a 61-game hitting streak in the PCL. And, these are articles that are kind of projecting this DiMaggio kid's going to be okay. And sure enough, he was. And there's so many, and that's where I'm going to kind of take the channel. I'm going to pull out articles and read through them, present some cards. I'll be doing the World Series games in a different format than I normally do. There's a lot of fun stuff that I think, anybody who likes that era of baseball will be gravitating towards it, hopefully. Because there's so much
players back then. Didn't the players back then travel mainly by train?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and that's how so it's like, the schedule was set up that, it wasn't just, you have a day game in New York, and then you just get on a plane and have the game the next evening in LA. Mm-hmm. You had to count for a couple of days for to
that's
go
exactly right
from one coast to the next for the schedule.
Yeah.
Well, you were just talking about history here.
Yeah.
So this is from 1943.
Oh, excellent.
So it's in the middle of the war.
Yeah.
And look at the ad on the back. Frozen feet can't fight.
Yeah.
It's for a rubber company.
Yeah. Kids. I remember those kids. Boy.
Yeah. And then I showed you guys this off air, but including shipping, I paid $10 for this. It's from 1952.
Yep.
And I wanted to show you one photo in here. Does this look familiar to you guys?
Oh, yeah. Yogi Bear.
The 1950 Bowman card.
Bowman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Pages are all nice and yellow. And
yeah. Hey, Don, as a Musial fan, you might appreciate this. This is my poor man's version of the Musial rookie card.
I wish they had made the rookie card that full photo.
Isn't that beautiful?
That
yep.
Yeah.
That glove and the uniform.
Yeah.
Oh God, oh jeez.
Yeah.
That would have been one beautiful card.
I know.
Oh my God.
Because I don't love the just headshot.
No, it doesn't bring out Stan the Man.
In fact, that may be the first time I actually saw the full photo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. See it again if you.
Yeah,
I
wanted to
took the headshot from that photo.
Hold on, let me get. There we go. Wow, and in color too. It's just.
Yeah.
And he was. I wonder how old he was because obviously the 48 Bowman wasn't it's quote unquote rookie card, but.
He was born in 20. He was born in 1920. So
I give that probably 1943 or 44.
Yeah.
When did he break into the big leagues? 41? No.
42 or 43.
Oh, 42. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was like close to his rookie year. That photo was taken.
Wow. Yeah. It's good stuff. But and then we're speaking a little bit of history. This is one that I thought was kind of interesting to tie in some things. Here's a baseball magazine, and this is Red Rolfe and Frank McCormick, who was the first baseman and a very, very solid hitter for the Cincinnati Reds. And the reason why I got this magazine, not the only reason, but a primary reason is that this is from the October 1939. So the Yankees were playing the Reds in the World Series, and that's where that photograph came from. But look at how beautiful this is.
Oh.
There's a rookie car, and the splendid Splinter.
Wow.
God, look how young he was there.
I know.
And, that's kind of my grail card to get for the 39 play ball set. But that's down the road, and we'll see.
Are you just collecting the Hall of Famers, Rob, or are you going after the whole set?
On the play ball, I'm going, well, right now I've got most of the Hall of Famers. There's a few that I'm missing. Obviously, Williams. I have the DiMaggio. I just got that a few months ago. It's right above my head here. And that was a very special card for me to get. because when I met you in Cleveland last year, Don, I was really under some very serious, sad circumstances.
Yeah, I remember.
And I had planned going to to try and find that DiMaggio then, and just didn't work out. But so to answer your question, I don't know if I'll try and go for the whole set. Those high numbers are pretty pricey. Fortunately, the only Hall of Famer in the high number grouping is Earl Averill. And I've been kind of spying his card here just to see if I can kind of find a deal, because those cards historically are so hard to find centered properly. And I've got a fairly good level of grades. I've got 5s in the DiMaggio. In the Hubble, I got a 5. Charlie Gehringer 5.
Was the DiMaggio an eBay purchase, or did you buy that off an auction site? Or?
No, it was an eBay purchase. Yeah, I went back and forth with the seller a little bit, but it was something. It was one of those where I just knew I had to jump because it was so perfectly centered.
Yeah,
and it just looked great.
Was it graded when you bought it, or was it?
It was graded when I bought it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the few that I didn't want to take a chance on spending that kind of coin on an ungraded card.
Yeah. So what is it about? Again, we talked about the history and different aspects and stuff, and I do have another question about what you said initially here. But what is it about the 39 play ball set that you're concentrating on, like the Hall of Famers and who knows where it's going the set? What's special about that 39 play ball set for you?
I think the origin of the 39 play ball has to do more with the year than with the set. Okay. And 1939 was the last year that Lou Gehrig played baseball. Mm-hmm. And there were so many things going on in the world as a historian, there's just so much going on. Even Little League Baseball started in 1939, and it was the 100-year anniversary of the quote invention of baseball by the mythical Abner Doubleday, who actually is a true historical figure.
Right.
But he really had nothing, not as much credit should be given to him for his connection to baseball. I think he's more connected to Fort Sumter in the Civil War and Gettysburg than he is to baseball. But be that as it may. And then you had the 1939 World's Fair. You had, as I mentioned earlier, The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind in Hollywood. Obviously, Germany invaded Poland in September. It was just so much going on in the world. So it just kind of fed into, what was baseball like with Lou Gehrig, without Lou Gehrig. I've kind of tracked his first and last hits, first and last home runs, World Series home runs. So it just kind of kept snowballing. And I said, not too many people, I don't see too many 39 play balls out there that people are showing. It's, it's kind of pretty much standard issue or some really rare stuff, which is so impressive to me, but that's out of my ballpark.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
But it's something that the play balls seem to be fairly affordable. And they're unique in that, first photographs really, black and whites. They look that age. They look from the Depression era. They're not all glitzy and, the chromies and refractors and all that stuff. So it kind of is a true reflection of what the era was. So that's really kind of the origins of it. And I've drifted a little bit into the Goudies, but they're a little bit more expensive because but some of the players that I'll be featuring, I need to get them. They weren't in the 39 play ball set. And a key one that was Lou Gehrig. Wasn't in that set.
Are you looking at any of the DeLongs or the Diamond Star sets?
I have several. I shouldn't say several. I have at least a few of the Diamond Stars. Okay. I use them as kind of a secondary. Like I'm looking at Tony Lazzeri right now. I'm trying to track him down. And he's pretty tough in the Goudie. They had 4-in-1s back then, kind of the multiplayer card, some of those, but I'm not sure, do I really want to go there or keep with the base player cards? So yeah, the DeLong's a little out of my price range still, but I should add to help me fund this new era. I'm sending in to Greg Morris about 600 of my cards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm consolidating again. I don't want to leave my family. Not that I'm going to be checking out real soon, hopefully, but it's just one of those things where I found I'm not the type of guy that can just, have a bunch of stuff because we live in a fairly small house and I'm literally in a closet. I'm in a walk-in closet. I can hit both walls. So this is my little cave, my little card room. But, I'm just trying to consolidate and show the cards so I can see them every day, say goodnight to them, that kind of thing. But keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's just kind of my style.
One quick, and I hate to go back sort of like off topic, but
I'll keep going because I just keep talking.
When you first started talking about wanting, collecting in '64 and wanting a Willie Mays, knowing that you were living in Southern California, so you had the Dodgers there. What was it about Willie Mays and the Giants? Like, why Willie Mays over a Sandy Koufax card? What drew you to Willie Mays to start off with when you were first getting cards?
Great question. We as I told you, my family, my dad and his parents, born and raised in the Bronx, and I was born on Long Island, and we moved out to California in January of 1962, and that fall the Giants and the Yankees were in the World Series. And my grandfather was a very avid New York Giants fan and became a San Francisco Giants fan. And they moved out 6 months after we had moved here because they wanted to stay close because my dad's two sisters were also out here. So everybody migrated from New York to California.
Okay.
So Willie Mays is in, and I'm only 7 years old at this point. So I don't have any real recall of the 62 World Series. I do recall the 63 series with the Dodgers and the Yankees. The Dodgers swept the Yankees that year. And then 64 is when I bought my first card. But because my grandfather was a very avid Giants fan, I used to go over on Sundays after Mass. My folks would drop my brother and I off, and we would watch ball games in the afternoon. And one of the ball games, this was in 1965, and you mentioned him a few minutes ago, Sandy Koufax, and it was the famous brawl at the Bay, I call it. And Juan Marichal took his bat and placed it very violently on John Roseborough's head.
Yes, he did.
And I watched that game, and the first thing that came to mind was, where's Willie? Where's Willie? And I'm only 10 years old at this point. And Willie ended up being really the mediator in that fight. He had a very active role in pulling Roseborough out of there because he and Roseborough were good buddies. And I did a video on that particular incident. And so really that's where the origin of, with my grandfather. My dad, actually, I don't know what happened. I never really got the clear answer from him. He became a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And the only thing I could come up with was he went to school at Fordham with Vin Scully. And they both graduated in 51. And then Scully obviously went on, followed up Red Barber as a broadcaster for the Dodgers, and then came out here. But my dad, I go, wait, you grew up in the Bronx. What's the deal? He goes, well, I just like the Dodgers. And I think it was more he became a Los Angeles Dodgers fan as opposed to being a Brooklyn Dodgers fan.
Okay.
When he was out here, he just figured,
when he moved out more.
Yeah, geographically, I may as well be a Dodgers fan.
Now do you still root for the Giants over the Dodgers, or are you more of a Dodgers fan?
Well, I've actually kind of drifted away from being active fan, so to speak.
Gotcha.
But I think I get ribbed all the time because I wear different. I've got a Boston Red Sox cap. I got a Cardinals hat. I got a Yankees cap. I mean, I got about 8 different teams that I wear around. So people, the Cardinals are really kicking tail this year. I go, oh, that's good.
What's interesting is I was watching some of your videos, and just even what you're talking about here in this. There's a lot of focus in a lot of Yankees players. There's Lou Gehrig, and you mentioned some other players that. So at first I was like, okay, is he a Yankees fan? I'm like, well, no, he's talking about the Giants. And then I heard you say something about your dad being a Brooklyn fan. I'm like, well, wait, no, how's everything tied together? And it's like, is he now into the collecting Yankees? Is that his focus, or is it not? And so
I think these are great questions, and I think it really has to do with I cheer for players as opposed to teams. I think that's really what it is. Yeah. Stan the Man is my guy. He and Lou Gehrig are my two, saints in the hobby. And if I could acquire Lou Gehrig cards, I'm kind of looking at one right now. I'm going, oh gosh,
Yeah.
But I've got the whole Stan Musial run, and I've got them all in 6s. And I thought that was pretty cool because that was his uniform number.
Yeah.
And I bought all of them. The only one that I had to keep buying because I buy them ungraded.
Right.
Yeah. So I had trouble with the 62. And I think it had to do with the borders and things like that.
Yeah.
But I did finally get the 62, and here it is just to prove it. And,
it's one of my favorite cards. I love that set.
Oh, it's a great, it is a great set. And, but it's one of those things where I kind of, there's a lot of players who just have quiet stories that really nobody knows about that I admire. And like Joe Gordon, he's an underappreciated Hall of Famer. The guy was a great player, but he was a great man. I mean, you probably both know the story about Larry Doby and how Joe Gordon kind of stepped in and, he was kind of the Pee Wee Reese was to
he's
Jackie
the one that said, come on out, let's have a catch.
Let's have a catch.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why Joe Gordon is, I have I don't know if I can pull it out during the video, but I have, the Dickie that I showed you, the 39 Gaudi Premium. I've got a Joe Gordon of that as well. So if I come across Joe Gordon stuff, I definitely want to grab that as well.
So how's the fascination or fandom with Musial? How did you come across or start liking him?
Yeah, exactly. St. Louis guy, all that sort of thing. I don't really remember specifically, but I think it's because I read about him in a book that involved a lot of the other great men athletes, and it was one of those things I was just kind of fascinated. Stan the Man, and the more I read about him, and I've got some other stuff from him. Read some articles. See, this is a photograph you may or may not have seen before, but this is Stan
with Kennedy. Yep.
Yeah. At the All-Star game. And, this is one out of a magazine. This is actually from a Sports Illustrated. I got an old version of it. This was from the day after I was born. Duke Snider's on a cover, but there's Stan the Man.
Yeah, that's a great photo of him.
Yeah. But everything I read about him, and here's one that this, the 63 card with Mays.
Yes.
This is what the card should have been, not the goofy expressions they both had.
What is that? The Thompson NL or something like that?
Yes, exactly. And it was just that he was such a great man, and I just missed seeing him play because he retired in 63, and I may have seen him play. My grandfather and my dad may have mentioned him.
That's kind of like me with Clemente. I might have seen him play, but I don't remember it.
Right. And I think it's probably whether, subliminal or not, maybe my dad and grandfather mentioned him, what a great player he was and that sort of thing. And, I always remember that. I'm a right-hander, but I remember that classic stance he had. Just great player.
I just find it a little, there are always players in the hobby that are more popular than not, regardless of what their career stats were, the type of player they were. I just find it odd that, and maybe it's because in terms of cards, Stan Musial doesn't have a whole lot of cards, and maybe that has something to do with it. But it just seems that he just, for the most part, he just gets looked over. I don't know why. You don't, Don, other than you, and obviously there's some others. Rob, you have his run. You said. That don't say like, hey, I'm a big Stan Musial fan or collector, and I don't know why. It's interesting in the hobby where you think some of these great players would be popular in the hobby, and they're not as popular.
Yeah, I mean, they've always thrown out that he played in St. Louis if he was with any of the New York teams.
Yeah,
any of the three.
I always kind of perceived Stan as a guy. He didn't seek out the spotlight. He was kind of like,
there's no controversy with him. There's no great stories like he wasn't out at the bars with like Mickey and Billy Martin and Whitey Ford. Right.
And Gehrig was kind of the same personality type.
Yeah.
But Lou is popular in the hobby for other reasons, right? I mean, the guy, died under very tragic circumstances, and his career was cut short. But Stan, had a wonderful full career, but
Right.
same type of thing. Just didn't. And like you said, Don, being in St. Louis, wasn't a celebrity hound and wasn't being followed by the press and so forth.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's interesting. I know we've got with the removal of the ban on Rose and Joe Jackson and that, and we'll see where that goes. But it's something I guess I go back to. I collect players as much as I'm not a big team guy, because unfortunately today teams really, to me, are a bunch of guys on the field with a new uniform every year. You don't see.
And then here in Pittsburgh, we don't have a major league team, so
Yeah,
it's hard to root for them, except when Paul Skeens pitches. But,
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think who this would be a good trivia question, which leads into I don't have a trivia question for anyone but Rob. I believe you have one for us, but we'll get that in a second here. I wonder who has the current for active players longevity with the same team. I mean, I know, since the free agency and all that stuff you get, but even then there were some players like Tony Gwynn, Cal Ripken, Ryan Sandberg, those, and then there were maybe somewhat later on. But today, like they're still diehard team fans.
Yeah.
But I think there may be growing number of player fans that'll follow because they like that player. Okay, well they're playing for the Mets this year. Oh, he got traded and now he's playing for the Padres. Oh, I'm going to root for the Padres because of him. And it's you don't see that longevity of a player with a single team for their career anymore. In fact, I don't know if you'll ever have a player.
I think it's someone like
coming
maybe
up as a rookie.
Maybe Judge will stay with the Yankees.
Yeah, maybe.
But you never know.
Yeah,
but you never know. I mean, look at A-Rod. I mean, he was doing great, and then when that contract was up, I mean, how much money and all that. So it's going to be interesting. But speaking of trivia, I guess Rob, you have a trivia question for us. So,
I do, and let me put it together here. And this is going to be a visual trivia question. We've got two.
Pull him up on one screen.
Yeah,
two photographs that I'm going to show you.
All right.
Okay.
And
those are pinstripes in case it doesn't come out, and that's the number 5.
Yeah.
Okay. And then those are pinstripes, and that's the number 9. I want you to identify each player.
The first one was DiMaggio.
This one is DiMaggio?
Yes.
No?
See,
no. Who's that?
Looks like Ted Williams, but it looks like he's right-handed.
What I find interesting is the two players that I thought it was Gehrig and Ted Williams, but both of them were left-handed, but it's showing them batting right-handed, and it's not an inverse image because the numbers are correct.
That's right.
So
all right, here's the answer. All right, you are looking at Frankie Crosetti.
Frankie Crosetti.
This photograph was taken in the 1936 World Series.
God, it looks just like that one card of him in spring training.
Right. Yeah. This is Joe DiMaggio. In 1936, his rookie year, he wore.
I meant 9. That one was DiMaggio. I had to sorry.
He wore number 9. So that what happened was after the 36 season, Crosetti and DiMaggio. Crosetti, I think, went to number 1, and DiMaggio took his famous number 5.
So anyone that watches this later and says they know that, they're full of crap. No way. I was like, the first one, I was like, oh, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah. Well, when I first saw it, I go, oh, no. And then I actually looked up on Baseball Reference because I go, wait a minute. That's Frankie Crosetti. And I checked the numbers, and sure enough, he wore number 5 during the 36 season.
Same thing happened with Mantle, right? His rookie year, he didn't have number 7. He was another number.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah.
And then he gets sent down to the minors, then comes back up and then takes number 7, something like that.
Yeah, and I don't remember who took number 6 at that point. But Yeah, there's in fact, I have a photograph in another room of Mantle with number 6 on his jersey. And
Well, doesn't his 51 Bowman?
Phil Rizzuto 6? I thought he
not
was number 1.
sure on that.
Billy Martin was number 1 as a manager, but I don't remember what number he was as a player.
Yeah.
Doesn't his 51 Bowman rookie card have a 6? Like you could see it's a 6 on the back of his uniform for Mantle.
I don't know.
I think that's because if you look really closely, I think that may be the card. Let us know in the comments. I don't have a 51 Bowman Mantle to just go look.
You don't?
No. So yeah, let us know in the comments if in fact the 51 Bowman Mantle shows him with his original jersey number, and I think it does, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So.
All right, you got us good on that one.
I did.
Yep.
I did. That was kind of a tricky one though. That was definitely tricky. And then
at first I thought it was somehow some reverse negative, but I'm like the jersey numbers were correct, so it's not like it looks like he's batting right, but he's really batting left.
I thought maybe it was a spring training game that Williams batted right-handed one time.
Yeah, no, it looks a lot like, but it being a 1937 magazine couldn't have been Williams. So yeah,
that's true.
But so there's a couple of more things I just wanted to show you here.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're kind of interesting.
Those magazines you've been showing, were they around in the 40s or did they end in?
Yeah. Actually, they started in the teens and went all the way through the late 50s. So and they're easy to find. eBay's got them all over the place. And Stan the Man, his first cover, I'm looking at that one. I think it was 1947.
That's what I was going to ask if he has one.
Yeah, he does.
Check that out.
And it's a real pretty one too.
Okay.
Yeah, you definitely want to look at that. And then his first mention is in a 43 issue. I don't remember exactly the month, but that was that's something that those are easily accessible, and they're great decorative pieces too.
Yeah.
You can read the articles and enjoy the history, and then put them up on your wall.
Right.
And,
well, I mentioned that my grandfather had all those Life magazines.
Yeah.
Well, my aunt, who she passed away a few years ago, lived out in Tucson, Arizona. And when years after my grandfather passed away and my grandmother passed away years later, she wanted all those Life magazines. So she paid to have them shipped, boxes, all the way out to Tucson, Arizona. And so since she's passed away, I've talked to my cousins because I believe my grandfather had a subscription. So it would have his little name and address on them.
Yeah.
And I went through looked up all the different Life magazines that have ball players on the front, whether they're famous or not, just some ball players. But there's some, obviously Mickey Mantle has a couple covers, and I think Ted Williams and things like that. So they still have to look through everything, but they said if they finally get around to going through all of them, and depending on what they would do, they're going to see if they can pull out some of them for me, just because, the family connection. I could go on eBay and, pick them up. It's not that, especially if it has the little address label of my grandfather, that would be cool to be able to display, regardless of the
that's a direct tie to the family. That's very cool. Yeah. And to give you a heads up on the Life magazine that you might be looking for, this is a TTM I got back in 1982.
I have that card set.
Yeah,
that is the diamond. Yeah. Yes, that is an awesome set. There's actually two different sets that card company came out with, like in 82 and 83 or 81 and 82, something like that. Yeah, I had those sets. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, and that was really, going back to my early collecting back in my early fantasy baseball, that was really the only old cards. They looked old. They weren't old. They were reprints, but this is actually the image of the 39 play ball. And, you put them up together, and I had them in display a few, but I didn't want to keep the autograph out potentially exposed to the sun, because that could be dangerous. But it's something that I wanted to also bring out, one historical thing that I think might be interesting for you. And that's because I'm such a history buff. I'm sorry about that, but
no, this is great.
I was telling you about this particular cover, and this is Red Rolfe and Frank McCormick in the 1939 World Series. And what I did was, Don, I think you were asking whether I collect the Diamond Stars. And
Correct.
Red Rolfe is not in that 39 play ball set.
Okay.
So I got this, and I was lucky enough to get a 4 on it, which is a good score for this particular.
That set is so unique.
Yeah, it really is.
Cool cards.
Yeah, it really is. And then because I was, I've got the 39 play ball of Frank McCormick, but this was one that I just thought was a pretty card. And this is the 41 play ball. And it's a 1.5, but I knew I was going to get a low grade because on the back, let's make sure I got it correct.
Oh, is a stamp or yeah.
Yes. Can you read it there? It's May 6, 1942. Right.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I go, this is a historical piece for me. And the reason being is that May 6th in United States history is important for a variety of reasons. But the primary one was that we were in the midst, this is 5-6 months after Pearl Harbor, and the Philippines fell completely to the Japanese on May 6th, the Battle of Corregidor. And at the same time, I think the next day, we lost the Battle of the Coral Sea. So the United States at this point was flailing, and there was serious concern as far as our ability to defend ourselves. But fortunately, a month later, literally almost 30 days later, Battle of Midway. And that was the turning point in the war, and we came back. But this is one of the examples of, a card that to me has extreme historical significance just because.
And we got a little bit of a history lesson there, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wonder, again, that stamp, it looks like it was one that those old time stamps where you could twist the
push it down
dates and stuff, and then you stamp. I wonder what was significant. Whoever did that back then, I wonder what was so that's I know I think John Mangini has a few pre-war cards where it's someone's initial or something that they marked.
He's got it from the same person. He found some of the same markings.
Yeah.
So, but I'm wondering, again, thinking about these are time capsules, right? So,
correct.
Someone had that card on that date and decided to stamp the date on the back. It makes you wonder what was going on, what was important that they wanted to put that date on the back of the card.
Maybe they got the card that day.
Unique piece,
Right. Yeah, in fact, you could look up Baseball Reference, what was happening May 6, 1942. Might have been a Cincinnati Reds fan, and he went to the game that day, and maybe saw Frank McCourt may have hit a home run that day. We don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
So, and in fact, some of these magazines, it's kind of fun because some will have the handwritten names of, I presume, the original or prior owner. And I've looked up some of those names. You can kind of track it to the city, and it matches up with the subscription label, all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty fascinating. And also, some of them actually have autographs in there because a lot of the interior of the magazine has, just as some examples, some of the photographs, that you might see that ended up as cards and that sort of thing. But some of them, and I don't have the magazine out, but I'll thumb through them, and all of a sudden I'll see an autograph of the player depicted. So in ballpoint pen. So a lot of these were probably brought to the ballpark during that time frame and had the players sign.
What else would they have unless they happen to have a card?
Right.
That would be the next best thing. You have this magazine of your favorite player, and you get to the ballpark, and especially if you're a kid, you walk way down or whatever, and that's a perfect thing to have signed. Is you open up to page 7. Hey, can you send? And they sign on their.
Do you know if you could buy those magazines at the ballpark?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't done that kind of research, but they were all of 20 cents.
Yeah.
And at 20 cents in the Depression, that's big dollars. So you make a decision: do I get a card they might not have had access to cards, and the magazine was something they could buy at the local bookstore or off the street vendor or whatever.
Yeah.
So a lot of mystery behind that, but it's just something, another aspect of the hobby that I think can be explored by people who are interested in that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it certainly fascinates me, and I'm looking forward. I hope I can produce some interesting content for everybody.
I'm sure you will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And like, as Don said, when he introduced you, I think there's definitely a place within YouTube for those that may, as part of the process, show some cards off, but it's telling stories. I think there are a lot of people out there that are interested in, okay, well, I've seen this card being shown off dozens of times. Hey, that's great copy, happy for you, all this stuff with pickup videos and stuff. But it's some of the stories that you don't hear about, whether it's tied to that player. So, okay, well, it's a 75 Topps Robin Yount card. Well, okay, well, but if you talk about some story of Robin Yount and maybe how he was a rookie in this, there was some interesting, and then you tie it into showing off that card. Yeah, it makes for good content. So I think you'll have a lot of success with doing these.
Well, the reason why I can tell the stories is because I lived through so much stuff that guys your age didn't see personally. You read about it, or you've seen it on a YouTube video. But some of the examples, like that Juan Marichal game that I watched, I listened to Sandy Koufax's Perfect Game, wire to wire. I was 10 years old. Yeah, it was September of '65. I was 10 years old. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, had the transistor radio going. I had 3 little sisters, and they're running around or 2 little sisters at that time. The youngest one wasn't born yet, but they're running around, and I'm trying to listen to this game, and I was just fascinated because the other team was only a one hitter. Lou Johnson was the only guy who got a hit in that game. And, in football, I saw the Ice Bowl, which is like a famous game that the Packers beat the Cowboys in the last play of the game. And, I watched all the first Super Bowl. I was there with my Little League team and all the dads. And we were in LA, and it was blacked out in LA. So they had one of the dads had a way of hooking it up and getting it, hijacked into the house. So
for the first Super Bowl, my mom was 7 months pregnant with me. So
is that right? There you go.
I was born in March of '67.
Oh, there you go. Very good. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that's where I enjoyed just kind of relaying some of those things that I lived through that you guys may not have lived through, and so it's fun. And the part of what I'm looking forward to is really digging deep into some of the great stories of these players.
I'm looking forward to those videos. They'll be great.
Well, all these, so many of these guys, and a lot of channels like Drew at Clean Cheap Shots, and some of the guys focus on, just the players that you don't hear too much about. And I think it's great because there's always a story behind that cardboard.
Right.
There really is. And so many of these guys from the 30s, and even, I'm starting a kind of an artistic collection. I like the 50 and 51 and 52 Bowmans, football and baseball. Yep. And you start, you look at the back of those cards, and most of those guys served in World War II or in Korea. And, I'd like to dig a little deeper on some of those guys too, because, obviously, to get to that level, you got to be a pretty darn good player. Not everybody's Hall of Fame caliber, but you got to be pretty darn good to play at that level. So good stuff. Yeah.
I saw an interview recently, and someone said the worst guy in the NBA, could some street guy take him? And he's like, oh, hell no. The worst guy in the NBA would kick your ass.
Yeah. That's right.
It's just amazing the level of talent. I saw it. Now, this has nothing to do with all-time players, but they were it was some Instagram short or YouTube thing or whatever, but they were 2 modern players. I think one of them was a pitcher and maybe one of them was a infielder, outfielder, or whatever. And they were on the field and they had this bucket. So they were sort of like in the outfield, and there was a bucket toward the infield. It looked like it was maybe 40 yards away.
Yeah.
And they just stood there and took the ball and chucked it. And the pitcher sunk it in the bucket. The other player took it and he said, okay, well, let me try. And he threw it, got it in the bucket. The pitcher again did it again. And he did it for like 2 times in a row. And I don't know if I think that's maybe all they showed or whatever. But just just throwing the ball that accurate to be able to get
Yeah.
it into a bucket from like 40 yards away.
Yeah.
Just the overall talent that some of these players have, and there are so many like them that are like this close to that level, but just can't break into the major leagues.
Was it Ted Williams that said something? The hardest thing in sports is to hit a round ball with a round bat.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So
yeah,
it's
if you think of just the not mathematics of it, but I mean, you have a round ball, so there's just a small little area to actually make contact.
Yeah.
And it's coming in at 90 plus miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, what do you think, as far as the modern game, I'm kind of disappointed that, so many of the game's records that we know for years and years and years are going to stay there. I just don't see,
especially the pitching ones for sure.
Oh yeah.
We may never see another 300 game winner or 3,000 strikeouts.
No, right. I mean, it's
you don't even get no hitters anymore because they don't let them finish the game.
Yeah.
They pull guys that are having no hitters.
Yeah. Well, Bob Gibson, he has some records that just baffle me.
Yeah.
He had 251 career victories, 255 complete games.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, that's you're never going to see that again. No way.
He's got
we're how long into the season? 50, 60 some games, something like that.
Yeah.
And I follow the Red Sox and the Mets, and I think it's is it David Peterson, the left-hander for the Mets. Just earlier this week, I think threw a 9-inning shutout, and that was the first for the team for any pitcher to go 9 innings. Forget about a shutout.
Yeah.
I mean, so even in this day and age, to throw 9 innings is so rare, because now you have like 4 or 5 setup people, and 1 or 2 closers, and then you got maybe 5 starters. So you load the pitching staff, and if you can get 5 innings out of a starting pitcher, that's great. Okay, you're done for the day, because also they're trying to throw 100 miles an hour, and you can't do that for 9 innings.
Right.
For most pitchers. So it's
I wonder if
those pitching records.
I'm sure they're doing a statistical analysis, and I don't follow the game very closely at all anymore. Yeah. But I would think that, when you're bringing in 2, 3, 4 pitchers per game, fresh, throwing 95 to 102, whatever, how is that affecting batting averages overall? Yeah. You look back in the 1930s, guys were winning the batting titles in, 343, 367, 381, DiMaggio and those guys, Gehrig, those guys were hitting 30, 40 home runs a year, 140 RBIs, 150 and still betting in the mid 300s. And I don't think that happens today. There's no way.
No, you either hit for now everyone is going to be screaming, Aaron Judge, because he's hitting near 400 and all the home runs, but he doesn't have that many RBIs, but he's near the top, so he's having a great year. And you may get that one player,
right,
that may have sort of a triple crown season, but then everyone else is either, oh yeah, we hit 40 home runs, well, we batted 240. It's like, oh, okay.
Rob, do you have that photo of Musial kneeling with that glove handy that you showed earlier?
Oh, you mean the rookie card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer. Look at that glove.
Oh, yeah.
I think back then there were a lot more hits because of these gloves that these outfielders had that were this big.
Yeah.
Like the guy from the A's that just went over the wall. There was no one in the 30s going over the wall with these gloves, taking a home run away. I've always wondered if, how many of those hits would have been caught with those huge gloves they have today.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you still got to hit the ball. I'm not saying they weren't great hitters.
Yeah. It's, you have to each era, you have the dead ball era. So you have, great pitching stats for back then, but, and maybe, just a few people, hitting very well. And then you had the time where, you start getting into more of the home run hitters, and so it ebb and flows in different technology and gloves and all that stuff.
Well,
now.
the difference between the 1930s/40s glove versus 50s and 60s, and now today's gloves. It'd be interesting to see what kind of glove Willie Mays was wearing in 1951 versus what he was wearing in 1972.
Right.
And whether, because he could catch anything with, his bare hands. That guy was so good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, Rob, this was great. Glad you were able to come on and join us. Some great stories, some great cards, and some great items that you showed off from your collection. And I think it's just amazing what you have done essentially in 2 years. You said you really started back up, and most of the stuff that you've showed us has happened over the last 2 years. And to me, that is incredibly impressive. Knowing that, you start off selling some of the stuff that you had, that you knew the direction that you wanted, and that helped fund it and stuff. So it's not like you're sitting there, oh yeah, I'm a multimillionaire and I just bought all these cards in the last 2 years. So it's been a struggle, a labor of love, I think you could say, but very impressive collection over the last 2 years. And we look forward to seeing your future videos on some of these, some of the history of the game, the players and the cards behind it. So again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you too. I was honored. I was kind of surprised getting a text from Don. I go, those guys don't even know who I am.
Oh, come on, man.
Well, it was like, and it's just been an honor to even be associated with you two today, and I've really enjoyed going back and forth. And
I'm glad you're on. I wanted to hear your story because I love your collection.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure and really an honor to be with both of you. So,
well, with that, we'll wrap it up.
Going while we're getting our butts kissed here, John.
I know. But for all of you who have stayed around for close to an hour and 15 minutes, we really appreciate it. Looking forward to see who we may have on as a next guest. It's going to be on me to choose the next guest. So we'll see who that is. I think I have an idea who I may invite on. And with that, thanks for everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, guys. Good night, everybody.